Your neighbor pulls out of the driveway every morning, waves, nods, and has absolutely no idea what is happening 40 feet behind your fence. Neither does the HOA, neither does the city, and whatever is back there is paying $5,000 a month. No permits, no livestock violations, no zoning infractions, because nothing on this list is legally classified as livestock. Not a single item on the list falls into the ordinance categories most municipalities use to regulate backyard animals. 8 systems under 800 square feet combined, all hidden from any street-facing angle, all operating below every relevant zoning threshold. One of them has a per-unit sale price that will make most people stop, look it up, and come back convinced it is a typo. Before the first system, these 8 do not just run side by side, they feed each other. The waste from one becomes the input for another, so by System 8, the combined costs are falling while the output climbs. That is not an accident. That is the design, and it is why stacking these systems together multiplies the return of each individual one. The single biggest reason people do not pursue backyard income is not money, and it is not space. It is the assumption they will get shut down. Most municipal livestock ordinances and HOA pet policies were written around one narrow category of animals: chickens, goats, pigs, cattle. The drafters of those ordinances were not thinking about isopods. They were not thinking about ornamental shrimp in a shed. Insects, aquatic invertebrates, game birds under specific classifications, all exist in a legal gray zone those ordinances never addressed. Every system in this video was chosen against 2 hard criteria before making the list. First, it must generate verifiable income from a real operator in a real state with documented numbers. Second, it must be physically undetectable from any street-facing angle of a standard suburban lot. If it failed either test, it was cut. 8 systems made it through both filters. System 1 is Mealworms, the floor of the entire operation and the input supplier for everything that comes after it. Income range: $300 to $600 per month. Startup under $80. Time commitment roughly 20 minutes a day. Mealworms are the larvae of the darkling beetle, and they eat wheat bran, oats, and vegetable scraps from the kitchen. They live in stacked plastic bins that sit in a covered shed corner, a garage, or against the back wall of any backyard structure. Completely invisible from the street, completely odorless, and completely outside every zoning ordinance in the country. The insect protein market grew 40% year over year between 2023 and 2025, and the acceleration has not stopped. Reptile owners, bird feeder enthusiasts, fishing bait buyers, and poultry keepers are all chasing a consistent local supply. Most regions simply cannot provide live and dried mealworms at volume, which is the exact opening that makes this market accessible. But the income angle most mealworm keepers leave sitting on the table is not the worms, it is the frass. Mealworm frass is the excrement produced as the colony feeds, a balanced, slow-release organic fertilizer comparable to worm castings. Organic gardeners pay $2 to $4 per pound for frass at farmers markets and through online listings every single week. Most mealworm operators scoop it into the trash and throw it away without realizing it is a third income stream from the exact same bin. 3 products from one operation. Live worms at $5 to $12 per $100 count. Dried worms at $15 to $25 per pound. Frass at $2 to $4 per pound. A seller in Knoxville, Tennessee, runs 22 stacked bins in a covered outdoor storage unit against the back wall of his property. He supplies live worms to 14 independent pet stores and 1 fishing bait distributor, plus sells dried product through an online storefront. Monthly gross, $100. Monthly material cost, 60 zlons in wheat bran and vegetable scraps. Time, 20 minutes a day. The frass from these bins goes directly into the microgreen trays in System 2, eliminating the largest recurring cost of that operation. One warning: letting temperature drop below 70 degrees. Fahrenheit slows or stops reproduction entirely. A $30 programmable space heater inside the storage unit protects a $1,000 per month operation from a $0 winter month. System 2 is raised bed microgreens, the fastest cash cycle in the backyard with a 7 to 14 day harvest window. Income range $600 to $1,100 per month. Startup $120 to $200. Harvest cycle 7 to 14 days. Microgreens are vegetable and herb seedlings harvested at the first true leaf stage, typically 1 to 2 weeks after germination. Sunflower shoots, pea shoots, radish, and amaranth are the volume movers that chefs consistently order in the highest quantities. A full production setup grows flat and low under shade cloth or inside a cold frame, below the sightline of any standard fence. Nobody driving or walking past the front of the property sees anything except a fence. The restaurant market for locally grown microgreens is not saturated. It is dramatically undersupplied in almost every metro area. Wholesale prices to chefs run $25 to $40 per pound for premium varieties. Not retail, not farmer's market, that is what a chef pays direct. A chef with a standing weekly order is the entire business model. Not a market stall, not competing on price with a grocery store. Solving a supply problem for someone who needs consistent local product and has no reliable local options is the whole pitch. Here is where System 1 does something critical. Mealworm frass from the bins replaces purchased fertilizer in every microgreen tray. Frass is nitrogen-rich, well-buffered, and water-soluble enough to use directly as a soil amendment without any processing. A grower running both systems simultaneously has eliminated the largest recurring cost in System 2 before spending anything on it. A grower in suburban Phoenix runs 48 square feet of trays flat against the back fence on a covered rear patio. 3 chefs, 1 Italian, 1 contemporary American, 1 private catering operation, are on weekly standing orders. Monthly revenue runs $800 to $1,100. Soil amendment cost is effectively zero, supplied by the mealworm operation 3 feet away. The biggest mistake is taking the first product to a farmer's market instead of walking it through the back door of a restaurant. A market stall pays retail, but requires setup time, fees, and inconsistent foot traffic. A chef on standing order absorbs the entire weekly run. Walk the back entrance of 3 upscale restaurants, bring a sample tray, and ask, "Do you have a reliable local supplier?" Almost none of them do. That conversation is worth more than any booth fee. System 3 is Ornamental shrimp, a shelf of tanks, a waiting list of buyers, and some of the highest per animal prices in this video. Income range $600 to $1,200 per month. Startup $80 to $200. Neocaridina and Caridina shrimp breed prolifically in a 10-gallon planted tank under the right water parameters. A single tank housing 30 breeding adults produces 60 to 120 offspring per month at peak reproduction. Sold wholesale to fish stores at $2 to $3 each, or directly to hobbyists online at $4 to $8 each. 1 tank at that production rate generates $120 to nearly $500 per month in new shrimp revenue. A shelving unit holding 5 tanks occupies a 3 by 6 foot footprint on a covered back porch or inside a small shed. That entire operation is invisible from the street and invisible from any drive-by inspection. Here is the number that changes the ceiling. Standard cherry red Neocaridina sell at $2 to $3 wholesale. Blue velvet and snowball morphs command $5 to $8. Crystal red and black varieties with documented grading sell for $15 to $40 per animal. A selectively bred line developed across 2 to 3 generations pushes per shrimp revenue from $3 to $25 from the exact same tank. The breeding program is the product, not just the shrimp. A seller in suburban Atlanta runs 5 tanks on a single shelf inside a covered rear porch enclosure. She sells crystal red and blue velvet morphs direct to hobbyists through a dedicated storefront and 2 aquarium forums. Monthly revenue $600 to $100 to $200 depending on the month's morph output from a space smaller than a dining table. The biggest mistake is skipping water parameter verification before adding animals. Shrimp are acutely sensitive to incorrect mineral ratios. A $20 TDS meter and a basic remineralization kit prevent 90% of the die-offs that stop most beginners before they reach profitability. The meter costs $20. Replacement breeding stock costs significantly more. Get the meter first. The tank water loaded with dissolved waste does not go down the drain. It feeds the duck compost loop in System 6. System 4 is Isopods, a shoebox-sized container in a garden shed generating $700 to $2,000 per month. Income range, $700 to $2,000 per month. Startup, $100 to $300. A breeding culture of Cubaris rubber ducky isopods, a rare color morph of a small crustacean about the size of a dime. Starter cultures of 10 to 15 animals sell for $50 to $200 per culture. One shoebox-sized enclosure holds a thriving self-reproducing colony that doubles in population every 6 to 8 weeks. A seller in Austin, Texas runs 30 cultures in an outdoor garden shed approximately the size of a bathroom linen closet. She sells through an Etsy shop and maintains a Discord community of 2,000 active terrarium hobbyists who are her core repeat buyers. Monthly income, $1,400 to $2,000 from a shed in the back corner of a standard suburban lot that nobody on the street knows exists. The market driving those numbers is the bioactive vivarium hobby, planted reptile enclosures, and micro-ecosystem terrarium builds. Isopods are the biological cleanup crew that every single bioactive system requires. They process waste and maintain substrate health. No mechanical filter replicates what isopods do in a living enclosure, which makes demand structural, consistent, and non-seasonal. Standard isopod varieties sell at $10 to $20 per culture. Rare colorways push to $80 to $200 per culture. Orange, powder blue, high yellow, white out, and the rubber ducky morph all command that premium pricing from established sellers. Once a reputation for rare, healthy, documented genetic lines is established, buyers pay for the lineage rather than just the animals. A shoebox, a garden shed, animals the size of a fingernail, and $1,400 a month from a hobby most of the world has never heard of. The biggest mistake is overwatering the substrate. Isopods require a moisture gradient with one wet end and one dry end. Uniform moisture across the entire enclosure creates mold conditions that can wipe a culture overnight. Wet one corner and leave the other dry. The colony distributes itself according to its own needs. System 5 has been on French restaurant menus for 400 years and sits in a plastic bin in a backyard shed. Income range, $180 to $400 per month. Startup $40 to $100. Escargot grade garden snails sell to restaurants at $10 to $20 per pound. Live snails to specialty food distributors at $8 to $14. A 5-gallon plastic container maintained at 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit and 80% humidity holds 200 to 300 breeding snails. That container produces no noise, no detectable odor, and requires 0 permits in any jurisdiction in the country. A single adult snail reaches harvest weight in 6 to 8 months and reproduces continuously year-round, laying 80 to 100 eggs per clutch. 200 snails become a self-replenishing production cycle from one plastic bin against the back wall of a shed. A snail farmer outside Trenton, New Jersey, supplies 3 upscale restaurants with 12 pounds of snails per month at $15 per pound. Monthly revenue, $180 from 2 plastic bins. Startup cost was $40 in breeding stock, a hydrometer, and coconut coir substrate. Almost no snail grower has discovered the direct-to-chef relationship that changes the economics of the entire operation. One executive chef who features escargot on a seasonal menu will take the entire production on contract at $18 to $22 per pound. That eliminates the market stall, the platform, the distributor, and every listing fee from the equation. Walk into the back of 3 upscale restaurants, bring a sample container, and ask, "Do you have a reliable local escargot supplier?" The answer is almost universally no, and that conversation starts a relationship worth more than any farmer's market table. The biggest mistake is overfeeding at scale. Snails in a dense, overfed environment develop infections that wipe a colony in 2 weeks. Start with 50 breeding snails, learn the feeding rhythm over 60 days, and then scale. There is no shortcut in that first window. System 6 is the only bird that makes the backyard more productive rather than simply producing from it. Cocky Campbell ducks. Income range $450 to $600 per month. Startup $200 to $350. Khaki Campbells are legal in many municipalities, where chickens are explicitly prohibited under current ordinances. They make significantly less noise than a chicken flock and look ornamental rather than agricultural from any neighboring angle. A small duck run tucked against the back fence reads as a garden feature from the street, not a production operation. Khaki Campbell hens hold the egg production world record for any duck breed. Up to 340 eggs per year from a well-managed hen. That outperforms the best chicken breeds by 40 eggs annually. And those eggs sell as specialty items at $6 to $10 per dozen. Standing order households that prefer duck eggs for baking pay $8 per dozen consistently and do not require a market visit. But the angle almost every duck keeper leaves on the table is the manure. Cocky Campbell manure is 40% more nitrogen dense than chicken. Unlike chicken manure, it composts rapidly into a ready-to-use garden amendment without a long curing period. Bagged before planting season, composted duck manure moves at $8 to $15 per 25-pound bag with almost zero local competition. Most duck keepers treat it as a waste product and throw it away, which is where the opportunity exists. The shrimp tank water from System 3, loaded with dissolved ammonia and nitrogen, waters the duck manure compost pile. That accelerates the breakdown and eliminates another recurring cost off the monthly expense list. A market gardener in southeastern Pennsylvania runs 18 Khaki Campbells alongside her raised bed operation. Eggs at $8 per dozen, 3 dozen per week. 40 bags of composted duck manure each spring at $12 each. Her ducks free range through vegetable beds, eliminating slugs, snails, and beetles without disturbing plant roots. Total duck attributed monthly income $450 to $600. Monthly feed bill $22. The biggest mistake is buying male ducks. Drakes are louder, can injure hens during breeding, and reduce egg yield per bird. Run an all-female flock if income is the goal, and let the foraging work do the rest. System 7 is crayfish running 2 completely separate income tracks from the same tank infrastructure simultaneously. Income range $500 to $1,400 per month. Startup $200 to $500. Most crayfish farmers pick one market. The operators clearing real income run both the culinary track and the aquarium track together. Red swamp crayfish served in Cajun and Creole cuisine sell live to restaurants at $4 to $8 per pound. They reach harvest weight in 60 to 90 days, and a 200-gallon stock tank running 3 cycles per year produces 30 to 50 pounds per cycle. That generates $360 to $1,200 in culinary market revenue annually from one tank sitting behind a fence. Layer the aquarium angle on top. Electric blue, zebra, and ghost crayfish sell as display animals at $15 to $40 each. A dedicated aquarium morph breeding tank running parallel uses the same filtration knowledge and feed inputs at a different price point. 2 markets from one infrastructure. The same water doing double work into 2 completely different biodemographics. A seller in Baton Rouge runs both tracks simultaneously. Culinary production to 2 local restaurants, aquarium morphs online. Combined monthly income from 400 square feet of water, $900 to $1,400. The nutrient-rich water from both tanks feeds the duck manure compost loop, cutting another recurring cost. The biggest mistake is underinvesting in filtration. Crayfish produce high ammonia loads relative to almost every other aquatic species. An underpowered filter creates water quality crashes that wipe an entire production cycle in 48 hours. Buy 1 grade of filtration above what seems necessary before adding a single animal. The upgrade cost is trivial against a cycle loss. System 8 is Nigerian dwarf goats. the anchor that most suburban backyards already qualify to host under existing ordinances. Income range: $600 to $900 per month. Startup $1,100 to $1,800. Nigerian dwarfs weigh 60 to 80 pounds. Smaller than most large dog breeds, smaller than a Labrador Retriever. In cities and suburbs that permit them, a 10 by 12 foot pen against a garage wall is completely invisible from any street-facing angle. From the street, it reads as a garden shed. It smells like a barn, only if someone walks directly up and presses their face against the wood. 3 completely separate product lines generate income simultaneously from 2 animals in a space smaller than most existing sheds. Nigerian dwarf milk carries 6 to 10% butterfat, nearly double the butterfat of full-size dairy goat breeds. That fat content makes it the preferred milk for artisan soap makers, cheese makers, and raw dairy buyers across the country. A single bar of artisan soap made from Nigerian dwarf milk sells for $8 to $14 at Etsy retail and farmers market retail. A wheel of fresh chèvre from the same milk sells for $12 to $18 at specialty food markets. In states where it is legal, raw milk sold direct to buyers fetches $4 to $8 per quart from customers on a waiting list. 2 dozen a standard pen produce enough milk for 40 to 60 bars of artisan soap per month. Sold at an average of $10 each through an Etsy shop and 1 monthly market appearance, that is $400 to $600 from soap alone. Before a single kid is sold, before a wheel of cheese moves, before a drop of raw milk changes hands. Each doe produces 1 to 3 kids per year. Quality kids from documented lines sell for $250 to $400 each. Kid sales averaged monthly across the year add $200 to $400 per month on top of the soap and dairy income. Combined monthly income from 2 does and $1 in a 10 by 12 foot pen. $600 to $900. A homesteader in Denver runs exactly this setup. 2 does, $1, pen built flush against the garage wall using salvaged lumber. She sells soap through Etsy and 1 Saturday market stall per month. Kid sales averaged add $300 on top. Her pen has never been visible from the street, and her HOA has never sent a single letter in 3 years of continuous operation. Startup: $800 to $1,200 for quality breeding stock, $300 to $500 for pen infrastructure, $80 to $120 for milking supplies. That total entry cost of $1,300 to $1,800 returns within 3 months of the first freshening under normal production. The biggest mistake is not establishing a hand milking routine in the first week after kidding. A new keeper who skips that window ends up with an uncooperative, skittish animal for the entire 8 to 10 month lactation cycle. Begin practicing 5 minutes per day with the animal 2 weeks before she kids. Build comfort before the milk ever arrives. The routine established in week 1 is the routine locked in for the rest of that lactation year. Set it correctly the first time. 8 systems, all invisible from the street, all operating below every relevant zoning threshold in most suburban jurisdictions. But the real reason this list clears $5,000 per month when stacked is not the individual numbers. It is the connections between them. Mealworm frass eliminates the fertilizer cost for microgreens, which eliminates the largest recurring expense in System 2. Shrimp tank water feeds the duck compost loop, which accelerates breakdown and eliminates a purchased amendment from System 6. Crayfish tank water feeds the same compost system. 2 waste streams, combining into 1 input for another system. Spent microgreen trays go into mealworm bins. Worm and mealworm waste goes into snail substrate and raised bed soil. Every output from one system is an input for another. The combined cost of running all 8 falls as each system matures. That is what separates a stacked backyard income system from 8 separate small businesses running with no connection between them. The person running only microgreens spends $20 a month on soil amendment. The person also running mealworms spends $0. The person running only ducks discards the manure. The person also running crayfish tanks uses wastewater to process that manure for free. Every connection added reduces the monthly operating cost of everything already running. The math compounds in the right direction. The starting point is not all 8 systems at once. That path leads to 8 mediocre setups and no real income from any of them. Start with the one that matches what already exists. A covered outdoor space and tolerance for detail points toward mealworms. Indoor shelving and access to restaurant contacts points toward microgreens. A covered porch and patience for selective breeding points toward shrimp or isopods. The goal on day 1 is not to build the entire ecosystem. It is to generate the first $300 from something already at hand. That first consistent income changes how the backyard gets perceived. It stops being a maintenance cost and becomes a production asset. Take that first revenue and invest it in the second system that connects most directly to what is already running. Buy the mealworm bins after the microgreens are producing. Buy the duck shelter after the shrimp tanks are stocked. Let the system connections reduce costs before adding complexity. Each addition should lower the cost of something already running. Nobody operating any of these 8 systems at real income levels started with all 8 on day 1. They started with 1, failed at parts of it, got less bad, and reinvested the first profits into the next layer. Drop a comment naming which of the 8 systems fits the current backyard setup best. Every comment gets a direct response. If this changed how a standard suburban lot looks as a production opportunity, subscribe and hit the bell for weekly systems breakdowns. The HOA, the neighbor, the city inspector. None of them need to know what is happening 40 feet behind the fence. That is the point, not hiding anything illegal, but operating within the legal architecture that most backyards already qualify for. 8 systems, 1 backyard, 1 carefully designed ecosystem where the output of each thing pays the input cost of the next.